In this video, I'm going to tell you how to prevent blisters. I'm going to give you 18 different pointers for beginners on how to prevent blisters on your feet and on your toes and heels so you can have an enjoyable time. My name's Linsdau. The first thing when you do is when you put on your boots is make sure your boot laces are not too tight and your boots fit well. If you put your boot on and you crank that thing down like crazy and you lace it up to a point where your foot doesn't move at all, chances are you're going to get blisters because your foot does need to move in your boot somewhat. Compare that to a mountaineering boot. You really don't want too much motion in there where you're going to struggle with any compression that will make your feet cold. But for normal weather hiking, having your boots too tight can cause you real problems, and it makes it easy for blisters to develop because you're crushing your skin, which crushes the blood flow, so those tiny little rubs make it very painful. Now, compare that with the next point of letting your boots be too loose. If you're climbing and hiking and you've got a very loose boot, and your boot is flapping around and slopping around, and your heel's moving up and down, and your feet are shuffling back and forth, the chance of you getting a blister is like 100% ding, ding, ding. You absolutely don't want to go there. So there is a balance to achieve between having your boots too tight and your boots too loose. Usually when I'm going uphill, I have my boot laces much looser on my boot. That way it prevents pain and suffering. I've got a link below to another video I did more specifically on this subject that'll also prevent tendonitis and tendon damage in your Achilles. The next point you need to consider is make sure you break in your boots. Do not go buy a set of boots that you're going to go hiking, backpacking, camping, climbing, or adventuring with the next day, because you're going to need to buy a first aid kit. I promise you, if you buy boots and go out the next day, you're going to tear up your feet. Now, what does breaking in boots mean? That means you actually put these things on with the socks that you expect to wear, lace them up, and don't just walk up and down the block and say, yeah, that's great. You want to actually walk up and down stairs, find some terrain, go to a park, wherever you might be in your part of the world. Wear these boots. Wear them for a week or 2 or 3. I mean, not constantly, but get some hours in them. At least 10 hours of actual use in your boots. That will make a huge difference. So breaking in the boots, what that does is it shapes the boot to your foot, so the leather or the liner or the thermal insert in your boot actually forms to your feet so you don't have any problems. The next thing that I'm going to tell you is to preload hotspot problem areas with your method of blister prevention that you want. Me, I prefer Band-Aids Tough Strips. These are by far the best that I found that stick to you. Full disclosure, I am not sponsored by Johnson & Johnson or the Band-Aid brand, although that'd be totally cool. If you guys are watching, I'd love to be sponsored by you because I absolutely swear by the Tough Strips cloth bandages. These will help you prevent blisters beyond anything else that I've ever used, because I have an issue where the heel of my shoe, or my heel, just no matter what boot I'm wearing, whether it's my Bronces, my Emiles, my Sportivas, my Keens, whatever it might be, for some reason my heel tends to rub and it just tears it up. So I just simply know that, and I'll actually take 2 different Band-Aids and put them in special locations on my heel to prevent this problem. And it has to do with my foot being really wide and my heel being neutral to slightly narrow, and no matter what I do, it just causes problems. So of course there is the option to do a couple other things with that. The next point I have to tell you is when you're trying to deal with these things, do not use plastic Band-Aids or the plastic waterproof version of Tough Strips or whatever else you buy, because the plastic ones, even though they're supposed to be waterproof, tend to disconnect from your skin. They will crinkle up and they will mess your feet up. You definitely don't want to have that happen to you, because let me tell you, I've tried it. I made the mistake before. I didn't get these and I got something else, and oh, suffering. So the next thing to try, if you don't have Band-Aids accessible to you, is use corn. They're for feet. They're called corns. You get these little hot spot, like spiky things. You can actually use corn and blister preventers on the bottoms of your feet or the sides or the heels. They actually work surprisingly well. I've been quite surprised with how well the corn preventer works. I don't have any on my feet, thank goodness, but the people that I know that have that problem, whoo-hoo, it's amazing how good they are. The next trick is to keep your feet dry. If you've got your feet in a waterproof boot, this nice waterproof here, my Keens are waterproof. Again, not sponsored by any product I show here, just showing you what I use. They are great. They're waterproof, they do super well, but man, my feet get sweaty. So anytime that I know I'm going to be stopping for a lunch break or a little bit more time, is I have my boots, is I just quickly stop, unlace them, take them off, and even take my socks off and put my socks inside out and air and dry my feet completely and double check to make sure that everything is okay. That brings me to the next point about preventing blisters for beginners is keep your feet clean. One of the big problems with very breathable mesh shoes is that the fine dust and particulates can filter in, and I have had my feet turn black from dirt in the Sierras. It's just unbelievable how fine that dust is. And once your feet get dirty, then the sweat sticks to them, and then they start rubbing, and you really get torn up. So you have to be careful about keeping your feet clean. If this is an issue, anytime you're hiking, like, man, my feet are getting dirty, and you happen to be by a creek, balance your time for making water and breaks, and simply wash off your feet and make sure they're completely dry and non-humid before you put your socks back on and your boots. And keeping your feet clean will go a long way to preventing blisters. The next thing is using Moleskin, a complete preventative, or you can just use a Moleskin. I'll put links below in the description to all these things I'm talking about. You put the Moleskin on whatever hot spot you might always know you have and use it as a preventative. Once you develop a blister, you need to do something else with that Moleskin. It's a little more challenging. The next thing is when you're going downhill especially, make sure to use the lacing technique where when you're going downhill, lace the ankles of your boots pretty darn tight, because as you're going downhill, you're going to experience what's called toe bang, where your toes actually bang into the end of your boot, and you don't want to have that happen because it will blister the tips of your toes, you will blacken your toenails, you will have a very unpleasant time. The next tip I'm going to give you is use a thick sock plus a thin sock. So I have these right socks right here. They're super nice, and I use these with a heavy-duty smart wool sock. Feel the goodness, baby. Yeah, because this system has never failed me in Antarctica, Greenland, Denali, Kilimanjaro, backpacking thousands of miles, blah, blah, blah. All this greatness. A thin sock plus a thicker sock prevents the friction, which ultimately is which causes blisters. The friction on your foot against your boot in the inner liner just rubbing will make you suffer. So all that friction sound is how that blister forms. Now there's another product that I've tried and I really like. These Right socks that I just showed you, Right sock actually makes this recycled wool double line sock to where if you don't like doing a double sock system, Right sock actually makes these socks that are double line, so you only are actually wearing one pair of socks, but they're double lined so they actually act like the dual friction thing. It's super cool. I'll put a link below. I've tried these for a long time. Initially I didn't like them. I'm going to have a bigger review, but they've grown on me and I've really developed a like for them. Next part, add blister prevention packs and marks to your shoes. Let's see, where is it here? I've got these heel snugs here. If your heel tends to wiggle around in your boot, you can actually put them directly inside of your boot and prevent that. There are other friction preventing patches. I'll put a link below in the description, where if you know you've got an issue inside your boot and it's the same spot every time but you love your boots otherwise, buy one of those patches, link below, put it inside of your boot, and then go on. It's super, super nice. Another tip is using blister prevention spray. I've not used it myself, but other people swear by it, where there's a literal spray that you can either put inside of your boot or on your feet, and it's supposed to do very well because it reduces the friction. It's kind of like a, shall we call a lubricant, if you will. There's also Glide for your groin area that you can use on your feet, and the doctor that I climbed with, Dr. Terry, where's the books? Yeah, Dr. Terry Williams, in my book, Adventure Expedition 1, he has a definite issue with his feet that every night he puts this ointment on there to prevent blisters. He gets some sort of rash, but he does super well with this ointment that he puts on there. Check out links below. And also, I talk about managing these issues in these books, not trying to sell to you here. I'm trying to show you that there are great resources out there, whether it's mine or somebody else's, to help prevent blisters on your feet. When you're doing creek crossings, one thing you may want to consider, because your feet are going to get completely drenched, is to put a plastic, so you've got your sock on, you put a plastic bag, ideally a bread bag, one without any holes. Bread bags are very good because they're actually quite tough. Put a bread bag completely over your feet and your socks, and then put your bread bag flying foot into your boot to do your creek crossing. And that will, assuming they're waterproof and water doesn't completely drown your feet, the bread bag maneuver actually works very well as a vapor barrier liner. I've only used it a couple times, but boy, when I have, it's been super, super helpful to help me prevent blisters. And the number one tip that you've been waiting for the whole time in this video is prevention. The moment you get what's called a hot spot, where you're walking along and all of a sudden your foot starts like, whoa, that's on fire. Hot spot prevention is everything. And the moment you detect it, stop. Don't say, oh, I'll just go 2 more miles, because those 2 miles go from a little burning pain in your foot to blister, and then you got to deal with it. I've done this many times where I'm like, oh no, I got to go finish. I got to do this and that. And it's a mistake every time. I promise you, if you take care of hot spots before they develop into a bigger issue, you'll have a much better time camping, climbing, hiking, adventuring, and using these absurd boots. I've got links below to all my review videos on these things as well. My name is Aaron Linsdau. I'm a polar explorer and professional adventurer. Please check out links below to my show World Beyond and Antarctic Tears, as well as my books, Antarctic Tears, Lost at Windy Corner, Adventure Expedition 1, right here, How to Keep Your Feet Warm in the Cold, the Jackson Hole Hiking Guide, the 2024 Total Eclipse Guides, and my book on how to tie knots for camping and survival. Please like and comment on the video and subscribe to the channel. Thank you very much for watching, and avoid your blisters!